Good morning, everyone. Welcome to June 22nd of the Kubernetes demo meeting. I wanted to do a little demo on Tameland after we had some node pool updates. Unfortunately, when we did some changes to our Git node pool, we dropped some labels. So Tameland is missing information after its last run. So I don't have anything to demo, unfortunately. So I'm just going to remove this from our thing and skip to the discussion items. However, item number one, walking through our HE proxy tooling changes. This is related to the IP saturation for our clusters. The goal here was that we would have the ability to, we have a tool called set server state. This provides us the capability to tell all of our HA proxy front ends that we want a backend to go down on purpose. We use this for Canary usually when it comes to problems with auto deployments or some sort of incident. In this particular case, since we are targeting bringing down specific clusters, I want to make sure that we only target specific clusters without harming all of our HA proxies. This should enable us to send all traffic for extra clusters to our backends. Currently, I cannot demo my changes because I added a bug when working on this and I haven't figured out how to fix it yet. So that's still a work in progress. But before I go on to item number 2, does anyone have any questions about my goals for this particular issue? Okay.
Sorry, I do. I was slow to press my button. Sorry. Yes. Could you just I haven't been following this epic super closely, but just like what's the goal we're trying to achieve by having this improvement?
Okay, so the goal here is that we want to validate that when we bring down a single cluster, we're not pounding Canary with the load that would normally go to other clusters, and I don't want to drain Canary across the board. So what I'm attempting to do here is tell, like, say for example, we want to turn down cluster, the cluster that's located in zone C, for example. What we would do here is tell all the HA proxies in that same zone to shut down their traffic load to Canary. And then we'll also tell those same HA proxies to shut down all traffic to the cluster located in zone C. That way, those HA proxies will start to send their remaining traffic to clusters B and D instead. I don't want to touch any other HA proxy because I don't want to change. I want to limit the amount of change of traffic going to Canary. So I don't want to change the landscape of HA proxy across the entire board. I still want to rely on all auto deployments running tests inside of Canary. And I want to make sure QA is still running against Canary. That way I'm not a blocker for auto deployments. So this change is going to enable us to be more incremental with what clusters are shut down and hopefully preventing auto deployment blocking situations. Does that make sense? I feel like I stumbled over my words a little bit. My apologies. So this is one of the tooling changes I want to produce. The second one is item number 2 here. So when it comes time for deploying, we have a method to ensure that if a cluster is down, that we don't bail in our deployer pipeline. We would set a specific environment variable. I've got it in this issue. Let me pull it up just so I could read it out loud, I guess. So we have an environment variable located in deployer called allow k8s failure. And all this does is when we send the trigger to k8s workloads, we wait for the pipeline to return a success or fail, and the deployer will obviously bubble that information to us. If we set the allow k8s fail to true, we ignore all failures in that pipeline, which is not precisely what I want here. You know, if there's a problem in cluster B, but we're, performing maintenance on cluster C, I don't want us to just skip over that failure or make that failure go by unacknowledged. I still want deploy to tell me that there's a problem somewhere. Please go look at it, because the release managers need to make sure that our clusters are not in any sort of awkward state. So what I want to do here is propose setting some new environment variable that may change the way that our auto deployment pipeline gets created, perhaps, or maybe changing the way that our K control script operates, such that if we are targeting a cluster for maintenance, we allow it to fail gracefully. This will enable auto deploy to pass without causing any sort of blocking issues in the deployment pipelines.
As part of that,
So,
Skyback, I would also consider whether we actually just either take away allow k8s failure and replace it with a thing, or whether you modify that, because we only kept it around for the possibility that a cluster is unavailable and we would want to skip that, which sounds like the behavior that you're describing here, we would want, although we don't have it now, it sounds like we would want the same thing, where we can deliberately say zone C is known to be unavailable. Everything else should be continuing as normal, but we want to know if it fails.
Yeah, like the auto k8s failure is an environment variable that is kind of a catch-all, and I don't want this to be a catch-all. Like, this is going to be planned maintenance, and, assuming we don't have a cluster fail on us, which lucky for us has yet to happen. But since this is planned maintenance, I want to be able to have the mechanism in place ahead of time. That way, release managers that are operating at that moment in time don't have to worry about things failing unnecessarily. We're not pinging people unnecessarily. We're managing this ahead of time. It's part of our procedure when we go do some sort of routine maintenance. That's what my goal here is to do, without hiding failures in other realms. So implementation aside, because I'm not yet picked up this issue, I'm going to work on this HA proxy tooling improvement first, but this will be my next item that I pick up for this workload. And then after these two items are done, the next goal is to actually perform some sort of test on staging, pulling down a cluster and making sure auto deploy doesn't block us, learning which alerts will trigger so that we know where we need, or like which alerts we need to put silences on in the future. And then I guess after that, we'll actually test actual cluster rebuilds and making sure we've got the appropriate documentation, but it'll be a while before we reach that particular step.
Maybe a simple way to implement it is to set the variable, instead of being a bool, to be a maybe string, or allow it to accept maybe the name of the cluster that we want to allow to fail.
That's precisely what I was thinking. I just haven't worked on those implementation details yet. But yeah, I was thinking of like something that allows us to maybe specify an array, because there could be a situation where we operate on 2 clusters at a time. But I figured I could iterate on that and work on that later, because I don't imagine us wanting to do that, because that might be a little too much. So far, the research I've done is just targeting oversaturation if 1 cluster goes down. Hopefully we never suffer a problem where 2 clusters go down, but there's nothing stopping US East 1 from going completely down on us, which would be highly unfortunate. But we've got bigger problems if that happens.
Do you want to get that issue set, Scott? I know you mentioned you'd pick it up as a next thing, and I know Matt and Jenny, I know you two are both busy on stuff at the moment, but Scott, do you want to just get that ready and sitting on the board so that whoever becomes available, if you fancy having a shot at it,
Sure.
you can, like, it's there if anyone wants to.
Yeah, I could do that.
You'll need to ask a load of questions for sure. I know there's not that much context, but also we're around to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, I'll try to work on refining the problem solution statement and maybe putting some pointers in. That way anyone can pick it up as they see fit.
Awesome.
It is already on the billboard, so there's that.
Do you want to put it into ready whenever it's ready?
We have a ready column?
Yeah, when the ready labels, when the ready label gets added, it's ready.
Oh,
and then it can get picked.
Sorry. My apologies.
Whatever you think.
I'll go.
Then yeah, stick that label on.
Oops. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong label when I asked that question. Okay, so that's all I've got. Does anyone have any further questions before we move on? All right, Ahmad, Tell us the good news, man.
So thank you. The IP allow list for GitLab SHD is rolled out yesterday. So SHD is fully on production, working, no issues so far. So this is the good news. There's no bad news. So unless anybody has any weird question.
I think just
Thank you.
take a moment to reflect on that. That's like
Thank you.
huge achievement. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, like this, like as I said, like I think I told you yesterday, Amy, like this was since I joined GitLab, the GitLab SHD was a thing. So finally, it's on production. If anybody has any question, just like shout out. The second item is Camo Proxy. Camo Proxy is also like on production. Vlad and Henry worked on the steps and everything, so kudos to them. It's now in production. Kudos also to Scarbeck who rolled it out. And to address your question, Amy, I don't think it's behind Cloudflare. It's just like on Kubernetes and yeah, working with the internal ingress.
Yeah, so we've got a DNS entry for the user static GitLab.net that points directly to the external IP that's assigned to the ingress object. I do want to send a special thanks to Vlad as well as Henry, even though he's no longer with us, that the fact that the change request was written in a way that I could follow without having to really worry about, you know, what potentially goes wrong is pretty fantastic. Like if you all were hit by a bus, I was able to take this change issue and with minimal questions, there's like one typo, but aside from that one typo, I was able to roll through this without any issues, despite the fact that I wasn't part of the testing and staging or thinking about what needs to be done ahead of time in production. And I greatly thank you for writing a procedure as precise as this. It was fantastic to roll through.
Thanks for saying that, Scarbeck. That's great feedback, and I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, well done, well done. On the reason I'm asking about the Cloudflare thing as well, Vlad, I'll leave this one with you, but just as a consideration for the deny list option, if there was a way to get Camo sitting behind Cloudflare, that could be a solution, because we currently do all of our deny listing either Cloudflare. So it might actually be a nicer and more kind of obvious place to look if you were SRE on call and you get paged on something. I think Cloudflare is normally where we'd look to do deny listing. So could be worth seeing if Camo could go behind it and what that might look like.
That might actually increase the performance of Camo Proxy because more data is being served behind Cloudflare versus our services responding. That could bring some cost benefit in terms of network costs and bandwidth.
Interesting. Yeah, so it could be a good one to test on.
So I think that's a good follow-up issue for a future improvement. I did have the question of like, what did we miss? And while this isn't something we necessarily missed, this is another future improvement. But we currently deployed Camo Proxy to a regional cluster. So we're kind of missing, as small as this deployment is, it's probably not entirely worth the effort, but like having this deployed to horizontal clusters makes more sense in terms of be able to divvy up some of that network traffic that goes between us. But then again, I think because we're pointing directly at Google's GKE load balancer, it might be less of an issue. I'm not really sure because this is using a different networking load balancing mechanism than what was available when we first started pushing our front end workloads in the Kubernetes. So it might be something we might want to consider looking into. And Ahmad created an issue for this already. That's linked to the epic. In terms of something else that I know we did miss, and Ahmad already worked on this yesterday and today and pushed it out, but we did miss labeling our pods. Therefore, our metric system was missing some of the data it needed for calculating like requests per minute and such. But Ahmad pushed a fix for that. So hopefully our metrics are good to go at this point. But I do want to ask the question to Ahmad and Vlad. I'm wondering if there's anything else that we missed that we need to kind of prioritize in the next few days.
Yeah, I think there is one item that Sean was talking about. We are missing the metrics for the container, like the CPU and like the memory of the container. And I think Camo proxy, the image we use doesn't have these kind of metrics. I think we could use some C advisor, but then if you are using C advisor, we need to integrate this with the application itself to basically make C advisor capture all of the metrics. So like, I don't know like the approach to actually do this, but still didn't think about it. But we are still missing some metrics there for the container itself.
Are these metrics that we only were able to gather through node metrics on virtual machines, and it's not a metric
Yeah,
that
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so the JVM of Camo proxies are not exposing these, correct?
It's no, like the virtual machine itself, no.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure if you are missing anything else, but there is still a couple of issues on the Epic, some minor issues. So I think in the future, Matt or Jenny could basically pick up some of these issues.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, well, that was a quick meeting. I'm sorry I don't have anything to demo. Hopefully next week I'll have more stuff to demo if I fix all my bugs with bash scripting. Alrighty, well, thanks everyone. Have a lovely day after the summer solstice if you live in this northern hemisphere. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.